we can go get ahead started if that works for you. Sure.
I'm on mute. Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started then. So thank you everyone for joining us today for another one of our Beyond School Hours follow-up webinars. We have these webinars every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and it's our way of bringing a little bit of the conference to you all year long. I'm going to drop some links in the chat. Please follow us on social media or check out some of our other upcoming webinars. Next week, we have Perspectives from the Field, which is an interactive talk show. We have a few of those throughout the year. And our special guest today is Laura Fenn from the Walking Classroom. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thanks, Paula. Hi, friends. It's so wonderful to see your faces. My heart breaks for those teachers who are still virtual teaching and all the kids just turn off their cameras and they're sort of speaking into the void. So thanks to you who have your cameras on. If you don't, I totally get it, but it is such a treat to see your smiling faces. I'll talk about the Walking Classroom for probably like the next half hour or so. And then if you have any questions, we are a small enough group this afternoon or this morning in California's case. Hi, Maria. That if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to just pop on in at any time. I'm very flexible. And I tend to blabber on and on, so it's probably a good idea to interrupt me while I get the chance. So I just said that. By the end of the presentation, I'm just going to review what the Walking Classroom is, sort of give you a general overview, talk a little bit about the research behind the program, how the program is structured, just a quick review of some of the resources that we have available. And then if your site or your school is still doing some hybrid or at-home learning, we have some ideas for that as well. And again, at any time, go ahead and just pop on in. So that's me, child of the 70s. I grew up on the south side of Chicago and played unattended for hours on rusty playground equipment. Although my house furniture was probably rusty as well. So, sort of a unattended freewheeling childhood. And I sort of tried to take some of that freedom into my classroom. I was a classroom teacher for about 15 years, and I taught in many different environments. I taught in East Harlem, New York. I taught in some rural areas. I taught in some swanky neighborhoods outside of in New Jersey. And regardless of where I taught, one thing was the same, and that was that every Friday afternoon, as long as my students got all of their work done, and shockingly, they always got all of their work done, we would play kickball. And so this was a tradition for years, and the kids looked so forward to it. And it was just a great team building, opportunity, a chance to just really build community and have some fun, and gave the kids something to look forward to. And, like I said, I did it for years until I wasn't able to anymore. And the reason I wasn't able to anymore is the reason, that impacts so many schools around the country. And time for PE and recess is being cut for classroom instruction. And it doesn't make any sense. The research proves otherwise, but, the administration thinks that, time in the seat is growing the brain. So anyway, it was sort of a bummer, but my kickball game got canceled. And it actually, there was a state mandate that there had to be 100 minutes of physical activity throughout the week. But with all this classroom instruction, there just wasn't enough time to do all that. And so my school district actually started counting the minutes that we would walk from our classroom down to the lunchroom or from our classroom down for water breaks as physical activity. And it's just heartbreaking because, fifth graders, they need to move. Everybody needs to move, but especially fifth graders. And it's a long day. I mean, just going to a workshop one day after 3 hours, you're like, oh, this is terrible. and kids do that for 180 days a year and then go to aftercare. And so it's just a really draining day when they don't get a chance to get out and have any fun. So, one day I'd had a really, really bad day at school, and, I was grumpy, and I came home and I didn't want to talk to my husband, and I didn't want to talk to my kids, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. And so I went for a walk. And while I was walking, I was listening to a podcast. And I always make fun of myself because instead of blowing off some steam and listening to like some aggressive heavy metal or rap music or something, I was listening to this podcast of, did Betsy Ross really create the first American flag? And so while I was walking, I was learning something. My mood was improving. I was getting some desperately needed fresh air and exercise. And as educators, you never turn that switch off, right? You're always a teacher. You're always wondering what would be the best for your students. And so while I was walking, I was like, hey, my kids could do this. So I got back home in a much better mood, and I searched the internet for educational podcasts for children and came up with a big fat zero. There's tons of educational podcasts out there, but there's none that are really appropriate for children or that are related to the curriculum or that, sort of fit the bill of what I needed. There's lots of 45-minute, hour-long podcasts, but, nothing sort of kid-friendly. So anyway, I started going through my lesson plans, and I started recording some of the lessons that I would have taught to my students while they were sitting down like that. And I was like, okay, so I went to Walmart and I got a classroom set of really cheap MP3 players. And I recorded a bunch of lessons that I would have taught while my students were sitting down. And I just created this playlist. And so I approached my principal and I was like, hey, I know that I'm not really allowed to take the kids outside anymore. It's, forbidden. I said, but how about this? I said, it's still me teaching, but it's just that I've recorded the lessons that I would have taught while my kids were in the classroom, and we're just going to listen to them while we walk outside. And I was sort of, waiting for the whip to come down and no outside. And my principal, she said to me, you know what? I'm getting ready to retire. I don't care what you do. So I was like, fantastic. And only because she now had that freedom to sort of let me try something was I able to sort of pilot the walking classroom. I never expected it to be an educational program. Honestly, I wanted the kids to be able to get outside and get some fresh air. I knew once they got back to class, we'd be able to sort of refocus and get so much more done. I just had to use the educational piece to sort of like sell the program and get the nod to do it. But what ended up happening was so wonderful. A lesson that would have been taught like this was now being taught like this. And so the kids, as you might imagine, they loved it. Like they just want to get outside. They couldn't care less. I used to laugh. I used to say it became so bad that like I could tell them they had to walk over glass and hot coals, to go outside. And they'd be like, okay, that's fine. As long as we're, they were like little puppy dogs. And so at first it was just the enthusiasm of getting outside, getting a break from the classroom. But it really did turn into something different and pretty immediate. Was the change in my non-traditional learners. And so, for my smart kids who could sit down and read a book or do a lesson and not be distracted, listening was not really their greatest skill. But for my students who might have been a poor reader for whatever reason, my dyslexic students, my autistic students, my students with ADHD, those kids who were sort of on the periphery for regular lessons, all of a sudden, their preferred learning style that they never knew about was being tapped into. And all of a sudden, we'd go for this walk for 15 minutes, they'd get some fresh air, they'd get some exercise, but they, just as importantly, they tapped into this method of learning that all of a sudden they knew all the answers. They were raising their hand, they were participating, they were feeling smart. And it was really this sort of this light bulb moment when you're 10 years old and you feel smart for the very first time. It's really empowering. And so it was just wonderful because, like I said, my smart kids were not really great listeners. And they realized that these other kids who had been struggling in the classroom, in fact, were also super smart, but just in a different way. And so it was really, really such a gift, to see those kids feel smart, but then also the other kids realize that the not so smart kids, in fact, were actually valuable members of the community. So anyway, walking, listening and learning, it's good for all students. But like I said, the methodology really does, help sort of bridge that achievement gap. Just even a 20-minute walk lights up the brain, really does prime it for learning. There's a ton of research about this. And so even though, schools now, thankfully, I think the pendulum is swinging back a little bit and they're allowing the kids to go to that crazy place outside, for recess and PE and things. It really does just sort of tap into really just priming it for learning. And there's so much research that goes into that. We actually worked with the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and it just proved what we had heard from teachers for years. And that is that, walking and learning really does increase learning and retention. And like I said, the kids just think it's fun. They don't even realize how much they're benefiting. The kids come back to class, they're in a better mood. That mood lasts throughout the day. For after school programs that use the walking classroom, facilitators report that attendance is always higher on walking classroom days because it gives the kids something to look forward to. Like it's still this academic enrichment activity, but it's fun. It's not sitting down and doing worksheets or watching another video and taking an online quiz. They're up and they're moving. And you're not even limited to nice weather days. I'll talk more about that later. So like I talked a little bit about earlier, just really walking while learning really does tap into different learning styles. So you've got your auditory, you also have your kinesthetic, and it really does help build the foundation for stronger readers. This is just sort of an aside, but, especially for middle school girls, their physical activity really, really plummets once they hit puberty. And, certainly PE teachers and after school facilitators have the best of intentions to get these kids up and moving. But, the thought of being active and doing trying to do a layup or, jumping rope in front of others is horrifying to some kids, my daughter included. But walking is an activity where everybody can be successful, right? So it's not like you're doing the crab race and, you need to embarrass yourself. It's walking, it's low risk. And, kids really can build up their stamina. They start to walk faster. They start to cover more distance. So their physical health is improving, their mental health is improving, and their academic health is improving with the walking classroom. Our researchers at the University of North Carolina, they did the quantitative research study, but then they also sat with the kids for several lunch periods and talked to them about, their experience with the walking classroom. And so while they were walking and then after they were walking, they felt happy and excited and relaxed and strong and energized. And then I don't have it up here, but on the days when they didn't get to do the walking classroom, they were like angry and mad. And so they really do, start to develop this really healthy habit. And, I laugh, it's almost Pavlovian because, they look forward to going out and going for a walk. And then so that excitement, if they use the program regularly, wouldn't it be great if that excitement can sort of last throughout the child's life, and you sort of build these healthy habits early. So there you go. There's a class after the walking classroom lesson. I mean, come on, what could be better? There we go. So it's truly as easy as walk, listen, and learn. The kids all listen to the same educational podcast at the same time. And there's, I'll review a little bit later about the podcast topics, but all the podcasts come preloaded on these audio devices. You might be familiar with the Playaway. Sometimes if you get it in like your public library or your school library, and it's usually like a book that comes preloaded on here. There's no uploading or downloading. It's all the content is already locked in there, ready to go. It's just that we have our custom content on here. So there's an entire school year's worth of curriculum related podcast topics. And so, if your after school program is sort of tasked with academic enrichment, you could say, hey kids, turn to number 27. Today, we're going to listen to a podcast about, currents and tides. And so you're doing a science unit. And so everybody clicks over to number 27. They all press play and then you walk. And if it's a nice day out, like that picture that was taken in California, shouldn't everybody be so lucky to live in a nice day in California like that? Perfect. But if you live in Chicago or, it's a super rainy day in Florida or whatever, you're not limited to good weather days. A lot of our schools, just do an interior route around the school. The kids, either way, they're just happy to get out of their seats. Obviously, they prefer to be outside, but you're certainly not limited to to not being able to use the program if it's not a nice day. Oh, and then there we go. That's my awesome graphic design skills with the masks. I was so proud of that. Okay. So this is just a quick little video of the program in action. Here we go.
It all starts with a few simple steps. An MP3 player with a social studies lesson via podcast, and you've got the walking classroom.
It's been really fun because we get to get out of the classroom and learn stuff that we haven't really learned.
With budgets being cut, very often students only get PE, once, maybe twice a week.
And so former teacher Laura Finn knew there was something more that could be done. Why not combine what students learn in the classroom with exercise?
You walk, but instead of sitting in a classroom, your brain gets more air and it helps you learn.
When we're inside the classroom, we have to sit there all day and do work. But when we go outside, we have fresh air and have energy to play.
Just to give you an idea of how successful this program is, researchers at Elon University started tracking the students' test scores before and after they started the program. In just 10 weeks, their scores shot up.
My kids have seen really good test scores. Yeah, social studies in particular, they've done really well because they listen to me, but they don't always listen to me the best. And when they get to hear it from another perspective.
By getting the students walking every day during school, we're trying to get them to establish healthy lifestyle habits early that they can carry forward with them as they grow older.
Good job. Good job.
In Alamance County.
So, side note, you'll notice those teachers standing there. We do encourage teachers to walk with the children. However, it was 1,000 degrees that day in North Carolina, and the teachers did not want to be sweaty in front of the cameras. So we let them slide on that one. But it's a great opportunity for the teachers to just get some fresh air and, burn off a little steam as well. It's also really great, for facilitators and after school, who are often tasked with providing this academic enrichment. A lot of times the facilitators, they're not so, fresh on their history or biographies or, the cycles of the moon. They don't have to be with the walking classroom. The walking classroom does all the work for them. All they have to do is be trained in how to use the program, and we provide that for free, and then just take the kids for a walk. And so it really does provide this really fun and engaging academic enrichment, but the onus is not on the facilitator to provide that knowledge. The knowledge comes from the walking classroom. All right, what do they listen to? So pull out your microscopes. Like I said, there's a school year's worth of educational podcasts that come preloaded. Now, all of the podcasts start with a health literacy message, And there's also a character value woven throughout the podcast. So the podcasts are about 15 minutes long. And this one, for example, physical versus political maps. And then the health literacy message is personal space, and the character value is reliability. So most of the podcasts have a similar structure where it's two students and their teacher who are out for a walk. They just happen to be talking about some sort of educational topic. So the kids who are walking, it's like they're eavesdropping on their conversation. So this physical versus political maps, it starts off with one kid saying like, dude, back up. You're totally like in my space. And then the other kid's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was so close. And then the teacher pops in and she talks a little bit about personal space, and especially now, very timely, but how some people, they're face talkers, they're super close. Me. And then there's other people who are like, hey, how are you? And they need their personal space. So they talk about that a little bit. And then, they talk about how different cultures also have different, not just different people, but people from, different areas in the world also have very different ideas of what personal space is. And then after that, like minute of just talking about that health literacy topic, then there's a pivot. Oh, speaking of space, remember last week when we were talking about maps, and then, talks about how maps represent space, and then how the difference between physical versus political maps. So then that, the topic will, the kids will talk back and forth, and then the teacher will clarify things, and then there might be some questions going on. And then when the podcast is over, we have a teacher's guide. We have a lesson plan that supports each podcast. And the character value, the social emotional learning component there's always a highlighted piece for the podcast. And so for this one, it's reliability. And so one of the discussion questions would be, why is it important for maps to be reliable, right? And then taking that one step further, why is it important for people to be reliable? And so, if the child is not comfortable talking about his or her own experience about reliability, well, maybe they could talk about with a map, and, if the map was or was not reliable, how that sort of put things into a tailspin. So just developing that those character values and that awareness. So the podcasts are targeted for grades 3 through 8. It's the same program. So if you have it's especially in an after school setting, it's a very flexible program. You can have your 4th graders use it, and then, your 8th graders can also use it, especially because the curriculum spirals up. So if kids are first exposed to like the Revolutionary War in 4th grade, by the time they get to 7th or 8th grade, they're going to go and take a deeper dive into the Revolutionary War. So they can listen to those same podcasts. When they're in 4th grade, they would probably have a basic understanding of the podcast about, the Boston Tea Party. But then when they're in 8th grade, if they listen to that same podcast, they would have a deeper understanding of who those people are, what the connections were, the different political components, that were, in play. So it's really a flexible program. So it's not that we have a 3rd grade version, a 4th grade version, a 5th grade version. We just have one version, and it's used across all grades. We do have some high schools that use the program as well, but it really is more targeted for upper elementary and middle school. So like I said, all the podcasts start with a health message, and then it pivots to the main content. And then at the end, there is a summary, that also pulls in a little bit of those character values. And like I said, we have extensive lesson plans that support each podcast. So there would be some, review of vocabulary, and then the questions for thought and discussion. And then, so the first 2 questions just related directly to the podcast content. And then again, the character value. This one in particular is about hot springs and geysers. And it's just connecting the idea, hot springs and geysers are both beautiful, but they're very different. And so it connects that idea of a geyser being explosive and a hot spring being, slow and sort of taking its time. And it connects that to different, communication styles. When is it appropriate to be explosive, or when's it not appropriate to be explosive? When might it be a better idea to be more thoughtful and taking your time? So really just working those character values in quite brilliantly, I might add. And then the comprehension quiz for each podcast. So if your after school program is tasked with providing academic enrichment for which you need, artifacts to prove it, we have comprehension quizzes that support each podcast. And they go from basic recall down to the higher level thinking skills like sequencing and inference. And then there's also two health message questions, that reinforce that health message that was introduced at the beginning of the podcast. So if the students use the walking classroom throughout the school year, it really does build their health literacy so that they're better able to make healthier choices going forward, setting them up for a much more successful lifestyle. It also definitely helps their physical health, just getting the exercise. And certainly the mental health is a huge component, just, all the connections, all the research that's proven how impactful just even walking is on improving students' mental health. So again, the program, flexible. We have a lot of schools that use it in regular class time, and we have a ton of schools that use it in out of school time. It's actually probably half and half. So, the program is, of course, my awesome graphic design skills is really flexible for that. If you do adopt the program, we provide free training to any facilitator who wants to use the program, free online training, and you can use that over and over again. So I understand that there's turnover, but all of that is free. Like I said, we're a nonprofit program. Half of our staff is former teachers. We're eager to help you have a successful implementation of the program. We offer free professional development. So after your staff has used the program for a while, if you would like me to run, a virtual professional development, just talking about best practices and maybe troubleshooting, and, I'm more than happy to do that. Just reach out. And then we also have an extensive adopter resources section on our website, and that is of created and curated resources that help support the podcasts as well. Just some ideas that you can do with the students after they come back. Have them create a listening journal. It just helps them sort of solidify their learning. And then we do encourage that they sort of would write down two questions, what they still wanted to learn more about, maybe what the podcast reminded them of, and then two thick questions about the podcast. So not something like, did you like it? But, practicing conversation skills like, well, what do you think, Sojourner Truth would have done if XYZ? And then, pulling something from the podcast about events that happened, and just encouraging students to really ask better questions and get them thinking a little bit more deeply. The walking classroom also enables, if you wanted to break the kids into groups, if you have 50 students in your after school program, you don't need 50 devices. You can get 10 devices, or you could get 25 devices and just share them around. You can have one group out walking while the other groups are working with the facilitator, and, the program is infinitely shareable. So, it just allows a lot of flexibility. Like I said, we usually do encourage the teachers, the facilitators to have everybody listen to the same podcast at the same time. But maybe you have Fun Friday or Fun Tuesday or a Fun whatever day, and you let the kids choose whatever podcast they want to listen to, and then they can go ahead and share out with their other classmates what the podcast was about, and maybe encourage them to listen to something, and they can sort of it's just wonderful when, these kids get the opportunity to choose what they want to learn about, and then they're excited about it, and then they share it with their classmates. Another fun thing to do is to head over to Google Maps, and you can have students like plot their walk, depending on how your site is situated. If you are walking, if you have the ability to walk outside, and we cover this in the training, but we encourage teachers to sort of walk around a wider area. So instead of like walking around a tiny parking lot 30 times and sort of making the students dizzy, if you could walk around the whole block, maybe 3 or 4 times. And then, and then we also have ideas for if you're doing inside rather than, walk around the gym 30 times, again, just do an interior route around the perimeter of the school on bad weather days. And your masks if you need them. A super, super, super fun thing that the kids love to do is to create their own podcasts. And so if the kids are keeping track of what they've listened to and in their listening journals, and then they're writing down questions of what they want to learn more about, that provides a great starting point for them to create their own podcast. There are a ton of free resources on the internet for the kids to create their own podcasts, but this just provides like real opportunity for them to do some research and to learn about something that they're interested in, and then to record that podcast and then to share it with others. So on the Walk-It is what we call the audio device. This is a locked and loaded device, so you're not able to load new podcasts on here. Podcasts that the students create would need to be uploaded onto the school or teacher website so that they could be shared out. But the great thing about these audio devices, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no data needed. The most off-task thing that the kids could do is listen to the wrong educational podcast. So there's no, they can't like search anything, they can't text. All it is educational podcasts. But they love it because it's a device, it's a thing. And we love it because they're getting fresh air and exercise, they're learning, and it's a screen-free activity. All right, how much does this awesome thing cost? So each of these audio devices is $125. That is a one-time purchase. It is yours then. It's not a renewable subscription. It's yours. There's a 1-year warranty on these. If something goes wrong within the year that you have it, then we do a full replacement. After a year, it's like a $19.99 replacement fee from the manufacturer. They're actually in Ohio. But I have to tell you, most of our adopters have been using the program 5, 6, 7 years, with no problems. Playaway is the manufacturer of the devices, and their main customer is the U.S. military. So these things are really pretty durable and made, designed to be sort of like thrown around in the field. So they can handle some 5th graders. But it requires 1 AAA battery. And that's it. So it comes with the audio device and then the lanyard to put it around your neck, and then a set of earbuds. So the program is easy to share. Like I said, you don't need, while the children are walking, they each need their own device, but that doesn't mean you need 1 device per child. Like, you can like sort of stagger the students for them to walk. And if your site has 50 kids, maybe you get 25 devices so that, you can just share them around. If you have the funding and you want a device for everybody, that's great. But just know that there are ways to sort of stagger it around. You don't necessarily need to do that. But wait, we're having a sale. We're a nonprofit program. We don't often have sales, but we are sort of offering this back to school sale. And so you get a 15% discount and free shipping through the end of this month. So if you're interested, you can send me an email and I can, I can have our office manager prepare a quote for you. Certainly no obligation, but if it helps with your planning, we're happy to do that. We also have a mobile app, and that's for after school programs. If you do have 1-to-1 devices, and that's $3.99 per device per month. And then we do have volume discounts if you have a larger student population that also has their own devices. So we could talk about that. Most of our 99% of our adopters use the audio device, the preloaded audio device. ESSER funds, if your organization has access to ESSER funds, We are so in line with their requirements. We are definitely an evidence-based intervention. We are a one-time expense. We are not a renewable subscription. You buy it, it's yours to keep. Our program for sure addresses learning loss and definitely provides social emotional support. And again, with our research, we are a tier 2 evidence-based program. So we are the second highest ranking that you can achieve. The program also is supported by the Teacher's Guide. We have a $150 print version or a $100 electronic version, but because you are wonderful and you are here and your time is valuable, if you want to send me an email, I am Laura, Laura, at thewalkingclassroom.org. And just indicate that that I got to see your beautiful face today, and I will go ahead and send you a link to the free teacher's guide, the free electronic teacher's guide. And you can just poke around and see if, it looks like it would be a good fit for your program. Also on our website, if you go to thewalkingclassroom.org, there is a section where we have some free sample podcasts. And so I would encourage you to go to the website and you can listen to a couple of the podcasts. And, just see if it's something that, again, that is a good fit for your after school program. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to just reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to chat. Okay, that is the end of my spiel. Let me see. Okay, I'm just going through some questions. Okay, great. Okay. Do the students need, how often do the students need to listen to the podcast to be successful? Ideally, twice a week, 3 times a week. If you could listen to it every day, all the better, because I promise you the kids love it. But in order for it to be impactful, I would say at least twice a week. Most of our adopters use it 3 or 4 times a week. And it's interesting because the program doesn't change, right? And so the podcasts are all the same. So if you use it this year and then with next year's cohort, it'll be the same podcasts. Most of the biographies are, historical people and historical events and science things that haven't changed. So the teachers become more familiar with the program and they implement it more and more and more. Teachers that have been teaching for 25 years, and I promise this is, I'm not just, saying this, but I've heard this from so many. They say that this is the best program that they've ever used. And the longer they have the program, the more often they use it because they really do just see the positive impacts. And as far as like behavior issues with kids, so often it's those squirrely kids that need the physical exercise the most in order to sort of reset themselves. And I promise you, the kids are so eager to get out of class and to get out of the building that all of a sudden, their behavior sort of gets in line and they realize, and there's a lot of classroom management and training that we sort of do with the teachers. But the kids really do realize that it's a privilege to use it and they don't want to screw that up so that they can keep using the program. And so very often if there's, kids who are sort of, behaviorally, you're worried about how that might go. What we encourage is sometimes giving them a leadership role and making them a pace car or a caboose and making sure that they take responsibility for the others. And they really do step up. So, we've got, I promise you, teachers are amazed that of the lack of behavior problems when using the walking classroom, because the kids realize that, this is a super fun thing that they want to keep doing. So, anyway, so I went sort of off track there. Bottom line, I would say if you could use it 2 to 3 times a week, that would be great. More is better. And if anybody else has, do the lessons in Spanish for ELL students. So we do have a program, a STEM program. So the walking classroom, the complete program has 167 podcasts and it's all in English. We have a STEM program, which are all of our science-based podcasts. That program has like 65 or 70 podcasts on there, but all of those podcasts have a Spanish introduction. So it's like a 30-second Spanish overview. And then that's just sort of tacked on to the main podcast. So we don't have a full Spanish version of the program, but we do have the STEM program that has the Spanish introductions, but those are just the science-based podcasts. And those audio devices are $100 a piece because they have fewer podcasts on there. So anyway, that is what we have to offer as far as Spanish accommodations go.
My office, we applied for the for a grant,
Uh-huh.
the emergency. Oh God, the name.
The ESSER funding?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, thank you. We applied for it and we haven't heard anything, but this is something that I would love to be able to integrate, especially right now when there are so many COVID restrictions for the students. This will be ideal for them to go outside and walk without having to worry about social distancing so much.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, and they do, they're able to socially distance, but you're able to cover a lot of things at once. They're getting that academic enrichment that, you're tasked with. But they just think it's fun. And you could do the whole lesson outside. We do have the teacher's guide, and you could just have the facilitator. We've got the electronic version. They could download it on their phone when you're done. Oh gosh, sorry. That's my daughter. I had my phone off, but she's on like the breakthrough, so, so sorry about that. But I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, you can walk outside and then you could do the post discussion outside as well. And, the kids love it. They really, really do.
So I know there's a discount if you're able to purchase it today. I haven't received the funding from the grant, and I don't know if I will, but if the event that I would,
yes,
apply the discount.
Sure. So what we can do is, if you wanted us to create a quote for you, we could go ahead and create a quote. And technically the sale ends at the end of this month. But I'm sure we could work together to extend that deadline. Like I said, we're a nonprofit program. We're just eager for, we're not able to offer sales because, we're not rolling in the cash, but we would certainly be happy to work with you. So if you wanted us to create a quote, it would be non-binding, and we would certainly do everything we could to honor that discount ongoing.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you.
You are so welcome. So here is my contact information. So again, I'm Laura at thewalkingclassroom.org, and that's our office number. And that's my favorite illustration ever. Keep clam and walk on. These are crazy times, but just keep clam and it'll all work out. I teachers and facilitators and administrators and whatever your position might be, I'm so grateful for all that you're doing for the students. It's they need you now more than ever, and I know that you're being pulled in a million different directions, but you're here, you're learning more about what you can do for those students, and for that we're just so grateful. So we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Laura. That was wonderful. We have webinars every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Next week is our first Perspectives from the Field. That's a series that we do every year, and this year our topic is cultivating creativity. I'll drop a link in the chat where you can read a bit more about that. But we hope that we'll see you again at another one of our webinars. And thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Paula. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.